Hi everyone! So as you all have requested, I've decided to film a makeup tutorial. This tutorial is going to be what I consider to be a daytime look, so it would be appropriate for any fancy daytime occasion, for work, for a job interview, and feel free to add more products or take some products away to change your look. So during this video, I'm going to talk about everything from primer to foundation to bronzer to eyeshadow. So if you just have a question about, let's say, bronzer, feel free to skip to that section. Before we get started, I just wanted to tell you about the rewards programs of Ulta and Sephora. If you sign up for those programs, they have a lot of different benefits. So like, for example, Ulta will give you a free birthday gift that might be like a sample of mascara or lip gloss. These programs give you points so you can get discounts when you purchase their products. And I get a lot of discount codes through Sephora that allow me to purchase or receive full-size products or even sample products to try out that I end up really liking and buying. And also a tip with Ulta and Sephora, if you order things online, then you tend to get more free samples online. And usually the minimum shipping to get free shipping is about $25. So let's say you're buying something that's $20, just find something that's at least $5 to get the shipping if you can afford it, and then try it out. And then if you don't like it, then you can return it in store. And then as far as the Sephora and Ulta policies go, you can try their products and return them with a receipt within 30 days as long as the product's not like totally damaged or it's more than halfway full. You can go in store and they will give you a sample of your shade to try out if you don't feel like purchasing the product. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind us women that makeup should be fun and it should be playful and it should be something creative for you. As Christians, we should be reminded that our beauty is not found in external appearances. It's found through the redeeming work of Christ and his work on the cross. So just keep that in mind when you're doing makeup, that it's not supposed to make us beautiful, because true beauty comes through the redeeming power of Christ. So the first thing that I want to talk about before I get into makeup is skincare. So no matter if you're using the most high-end makeup, it's not going to look well unless you have good skin underneath. And so I'm just going to recommend some of the products. I honestly don't have a super good skincare routine, but it's been working for me. So the face wash that I really like is this one by Purity. And this is obviously a gigantic tub, it's 32 fluid ounces, but I think that does a really good job of cleansing my face, removing dirt and oil, but also removing my makeup as well. If you're looking for something from the drugstore, I really enjoy Cetaphil. I like the Daily Facial Cleanser. This is something that my dermatologist recommended, and I think it does a good job of just cleansing your skin very gently, removing dirt and oil, but I will say it doesn't do a good job of removing your makeup, so I would use a makeup wipe before going in with this. The moisturizers that I like are all from CeraVe. This one is the moisturizing lotion. It comes in a big pump bottle like this. Then I also like the facial moisturizing lotion with SPF. And I also like the moisturizing cream if my skin is really dry during the winter. I use this one basically every day on a daily basis, and then I use this one if I know I'm gonna have a lot of sun exposure. So the first makeup product I want to talk about is primer. A primer is what goes on underneath your foundation. So I really enjoy this one. It's the Smashbox Photo Finish Primer. I think this does a good job of smoothing out your pores and just creating a nice canvas for your foundation to lay on. If you're more on the oily side, then you might want a mattifying primer, and if you're more on the dry side, you might want something really moisturizing, or even with something that has some luminosity to it, that has a nice glow. But this one I think is really good. So starting off, I've already washed my face and moisturized my skin. So now I'm gonna go in with that Photo Finish Primer, and I just put about this much on my fingers. So I'm gonna start by rubbing my hands together, and I'm gonna be looking down at my mirror. But I focus it right here because that's where I have the largest pores, right here on my forehead and on my chin because that's where I get the oiliest, and then I push it out and work it out on the rest of my face. So now we're going to move on to foundation. There are so many good drugstore foundations that I wouldn't even bother going high-end, although high-end has a lot of great foundations too, but there are so many good ones at the drugstore. My favorite one is the L'Oreal True Match, and I am in the shade W3. And I actually have this foundation poured into this Makeup Forever bottle just because this Makeup Forever bottle has a pump on it, which I like. So the basics of foundation are that you want to find a foundation for your skin type and then your skin color. So your skin type would be, if you're dry, then you might want something that's very moisturizing with a lot of luminosity. If you're dry, then you might want a foundation that's very matte. The reason I like the L'Oreal True Blend foundation is because it's a nice kind of satin matte finish where it's not too dewy for me and it's not too dry for me. So it's important to get the right shade. So if you're really fair, then you don't need a really dark foundation. But it's also important to get the right undertone. And this is just important for you to play around with. So if you try a foundation on and it looks really orange and or yellow on you, then it's gonna be too warm for you if it kind of makes you look like you have a super bad fake tan or like an Oompa Loompa. But then again, if you try a foundation that you know is your right color, but is maybe not the right undertone, and you try it on and it might make you look kind of pasty or ashy or just kind of washed out, then it might be too cool for you. So just keep playing around with it. If it looks off, then just try to get that same color but in a different undertone, maybe with more yellow in it or more pink in it. So I have a warm undertone, which means I have lots of yellow or kind of golden undertones in my skin, so that's why I went with W3, which stands for warm 3, as opposed to C, which stands for cool. That would have a lot of pink and red undertones. Warm would have a lot of yellow, gold, and then neutral would be right in the middle. Most people fall in one of those three categories. And if you hear something crying in the background, that's my wonderful daughter. It's her nap time, so she's not the happiest right now. So I'm gonna be applying my foundation with a damp beauty sponge. So this is from Real Techniques, it's from the drugstore. So this is wet, so all I did was wring it underneath some water, squeeze it out a few times, and then wrap it in a paper towel and squeeze out all the excess so it's nice and damp. So you can see it in the size comparison that this one is dry and this one's wet. And then I'm also gonna be applying with just a brush. This is a Morphe E8. So I'm gonna start by shaking up my foundation just because sometimes it settles at the bottom. And I just like to squeeze a pump on my face and then wipe off the excess. And then just kind of paint it on my face. Until I feel like most of the product's off the brush. So this one pump could cover about half of my face. So I like doing it that way because I feel like it helps me to control the coverage. And then I just take that damp beauty sponge and lightly pat it into my skin. So when you're using a beauty sponge, I like that over brushes because sometimes brushes can leave streaks on your face. And if you use a damp beauty sponge, it really pushes the product into your skin and looks very airbrushed and flawless. And you want to take the foundation as far down as you want to, but definitely don't stop here. Continue to take it down your neck. So I'm just going to take whatever's left over and kind of put it down my neck. So once again, I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Shake up my foundation. Squeeze a pump on my face. And just kind of paint it on. So you always want to start off with a light layer of foundation. We're going to be putting so many layers of products on our face that it's always, always, always best to start light and then build and add more coverage if you need it. So here's one layer of foundation. So as you can see, you can still see my imperfections peeking through, but it's created a nice even canvas for my skin. So the next thing I want to talk about are concealers. My two favorite concealers would be the Tarte Shape Tape in the color Light Neutral. and the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer in the shade 15 and 10. I'm pretty pale right now because it's winter, so the Tarte Shape Tape is a little too dark for me. So today I'm gonna use the Maybelline Fit Me in shade 15. So I really like the Tarte Shape Tape because it's really full coverage and it hardly creases underneath my under eyes at all. And I feel like it does a great job of staying put. I like the Maybelline Fit Me concealers because they're not as drying as the Tarte Shape Tape, and they offer a nice kind of dew glow, but they do crease under my eyes a little bit. They're not as full coverage as the Tarte Shape Tape, so if I want kind of a lighter look, then I reach for the Maybelline Fit Me concealers. So the trick with concealers is that you want to apply it in a triangular motion. So a lot of women think, okay, well I have darkness right there, and they just put a strip. But it's more flattering on your face if you can apply it in this triangular motion like this. And then I get a lot of redness around my nose, so I conceal that as well. And I do it on the other eye as well. And this would be a good time to spot conceal any blemishes that you have. So now I'm gonna set my face with powder. When you set your face with powder, it really locks in the liquid and keeps it from moving. The powder that I really like is the Coty Airspun. I have oily skin, and this does a great job of keeping my oils under control. And that Coty Airspun's from the drugstore, so it's really inexpensive. The other one I like is the RCMA No Color Powder. This is a little bit better for people who don't have super oily skin. And so those are both two translucent powders. If I want more coverage, then I go in with the MAC Mineralized Skin Finish. Looks like this. Looks like this. And it's just a face powder with a light amount of coverage. So if you're drier, you might not want to set your face with powder at all, or you might just want to set your oily areas, so maybe your forehead, your nose, and your chin. I'm oily all over, so I put powder all over my face. So this is the Coty Airspun powder. One bad thing about this powder is it smells like your grandma. It is so full of perfume, but it works so well for me, so I love it. So I just take my beauty blender, and the first thing I set is my under eyes. And so with light pressure, I'm just gonna go and tap out any places that might have creased. So now I take that wet sponge and dip it straight into the powder, like that. So it's covering the sponge and it looks like this. And I tap out any creasing, and then I press it into underneath my under eye, like that. Then I do the same thing. I dip it in there, tap out any creasing, and then set. I just go back and forth with that sponge. And then I do the same thing on my forehead. I press it into my skin, on my chin, and around my smile lines. I really press it into the skin. This is a great technique if you have really oily skin. Then I just take a super fluffy brush. It's not very dense at all. And then just the rest of my face, I tap my brush in, tap off all that excess powder. And then just kind of go in and tap that powder on my face and tap out the creasing on my eyelids. And just take that brush really lightly and dust the powder all over your face. And even drag that powder down your neck, because we drug the foundation down our neck. So as you can see, my skin color is all one color and it's flat. So I've evened everything out, but I need to add some more color and dimension back to it. So we do that with bronzer, blush, and highlight. The two main bronzers that I use are the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. They have a lot of different shades. This is from the drugstore. And the Hoola Benefit Bronzer. I get this at Ulta or Sephora. I like both of these bronzers because no matter how pale I am or how tan I am, both of them look really good on my skin color. They both have a good undertone that don't make me look too cool and ashy or too worn like an Oompa Loompa. And they blend out so nicely. So today I'm going to be using the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer just because I just bought it and I really enjoy it. So I'm going to take another fluffy brush. By the way, this brush was a Real Techniques brush. You can get these at Ulta. Real Techniques have a lot of great inexpensive brushes. This is another Real Techniques brush. And then Morphe has a lot of inexpensive brushes as well. So I just take a big fluffy brush, dip it in, and I always tap off the excess. So where we're going to be putting this blush kind of starts at the top of our ear and we're going to work down towards our mouth. So I'm going to find kind of this divot in my face right underneath my cheekbone to add some depth back into my face. So you always want to start back by your hairline because we don't want too much product going on right here. So I just take it and really lightly just kind of start fluffing it into my skin, starting out about right here, and then I drag it up a little bit higher and higher and higher. So I'm going to go in for round 2, tap off the excess, and do the same thing on my forehead. So I'm going to focus that color kind of right above my brow. So if you have a big forehead, then you want to take this bronzer down to create a smaller forehead. If you have a small forehead, then you might want to just focus the color in about right here. I think I have a medium-sized forehead, so I'm just going to kind of do it all over. So once again, start back at the hairline and focus it right above the arch of your eyebrow. And then I take it in and I focus it mainly on the hairline. So I'm going to leave this space here pretty blank. And bring it down and blend it in with that bronzer that you already had. So as you can see, this side of my face has some nice color and depth to it, where this side is still flat. And I'm just going to repeat the steps on the other side. And you also want to take that bronzer down your neck. So now we want to bring some warmth and structure back to our nose. So I'm going to take that same butter bronzer by Physicians Formula, except in a lighter shade, and then a tiny but fluffy brush like this that has a nice tip at the end. So I just go in and kind of swirl my brush around, tap off the extra, and then you basically just want to create 2 straight lines that go down your nose. So this is going to bring warmth back to the center of your face, but also kind of straighten up your nose, make it look nice and thin. So if you have a crooked nose, you can kind of straighten it out this way. If you have a bigger nose, you can make it look smaller this way. So I'm basically just going to draw an 11 down my nose. So you want to leave the bridge, the center of your nose, blank and draw 2 straight lines down the side. Very light pressure, just draw them straight down. And I even connect it back up here to my eyebrow. So back and forth, you want this to look very soft. And then sweep a little bit on the bottom of your nose. And make sure you blend it out. You want it to look nice and soft instead of 2 harsh lines going down your nose. So now we're going to add some more color back to our face with blush. The blush that I really like from the drugstore is this Milani Baked Blush in the shade Luminoso. I got this really pretty blush palette from Tarte as it's one of their holiday collections. So I enjoy this. It just has a bunch of different colors for a lot of different skin tones that work really well. I like the Milani blush because it's inexpensive and it has a little bit of sheen to it, so it adds a nice glow to my skin. I like the Tarte Amazonian Clay blushes because they have a lot of pigment and they're really easy to blend out, but they stay really well on your cheeks. So today I'm going to use that Milani blush and another brush from Real Techniques. So I just tap it in tap off the excess. And then I smile so I can see my cheekbones. And the first place you place your brush is gonna give you the most pigment. So I really like it on the apples of my cheek. So I start here and then just bring it back. And I do drag a little bit down my nose as well. So there we have some nice color back to our skin. So now if you wanted to add a nice glow to your skin or some dewiness to your skin, highlight would be the way to go. I think highlight is a really trendy thing right now, and sometimes if it's not done right, it doesn't look very natural. So I totally skip highlight, one, because I'm really oily and 2 hours after wearing my makeup, I have a natural glow to my skin, which is my oils. But two, like I said before, sometimes if it's not done right, I don't think it looks very good and it looks really unnatural. One highlight that I really enjoy that kind of gives a nice glow from within that I put on all my brides is the Hourglass highlight in the shade Diffuse Light. I go in with that same blush brush, but I just flip it to the other side and I tap it in. This is so sheer, I don't even tap off the excess and I just go straight in. So you wanna put it, so bronzer was here, then blush, and then you wanna put it on top at the high points of your face. So I just kinda dust it all over here. Go back in, don't even tap off the excess. Dust it all over here. I take some above my brow, drag it down my nose, on my chin. This is so sheer that you could really put it all over your face and it gives a nice glow to the face. So now for eyeshadow. So we already have that concealer that we set with powder. So that's gonna create a nice even base to put our eyeshadows through so that way no discoloration or veins are peeking through. One of the palettes that I really enjoy is the Tartelette in Bloom palette. This is a palette that I wore on my wedding day. I think it's great for all different skin colors because it's not too warm and it's not too cool. It's pretty kind of warm neutral. So it's really flattering on all skin colors. Looks like this on the inside, so it's very well loved. And I got that Tartelette palette at Sephora. Another one that I like is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. This is a very warm palette and it is pretty expensive, but I think it's so beautiful. Another palette that I like is the Jaclyn Hill palette. This is from Morphe. You can get this at Ulta and it's rather inexpensive. I think it's 35 colors for $38, and for reference, this one is 14 colors for like $42. So for this demonstration, I'm gonna be using the Tartelette in Bloom palette. So the first thing you wanna do, this is a Morphe M513. So it's a nice fluffy brush. So you wanna start with a color that's similar to your natural skin color, except maybe just a little bit darker. So I go in and mix these two shades here. So I just kind of swirl my brush around in there and tap off the excess. So you wanna start by placing that color right here on your socket. So if you can see if that's not grossing you out. So I place it right there. And I just very lightly just go back and forth all the way through the crease, back and forth. So you want to kind of start off deep in that socket, and sometimes you can even raise your eyebrow. And I'm not afraid if that shadow falls on my lid, but I just don't want it to go too high. So now that I feel like I have most of the product off my brush, I just kind of go around in circular motions and diffuse that color. So as you can see, there's really not much of a difference between this eye, which we put the color on, and this eye. And you're not gonna see that color a lot in the end result, but it's gonna make everything transition very nicely and look very well blended. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other eye. So the key is to start with very light shadows and then gradually build your way up into darker and darker shadows to create more depth and kind of sultriness in your eye look. So now I'm gonna go in with that same brush and kind of mix these two colors together. So these two mixed together are a little bit darker than the ones that I already put in. And instead of dipping my brush straight in, I'm gonna kind of put it in at an angle like this and dip a little bit of that pink and a little bit of that brown orange and tap off the excess. And then you really wanna concentrate the color right in your crease and then gradually blow it out onto the lid and up by the brow bone. So I'm going to take that brush and nestle it in my crease. And I always like to start on the outer corner because that's where I want the most pigment, and then drag it in. And I do drag that color a little bit on the outer part of my eyelid because I do like some depth in the outer corner. So once again, focusing this product really low, and then when I feel like most of the product's gone, I just kind of go up in circular motions and just kind of drag that product out. Or sometimes I'll even just kind of rub off the product on my hand and then go in and really blow it out. And do the same thing on the other eye. So now I'd like to add a little bit more depth. So then I'm gonna go in with a smaller brush. So this is the brush we just finished using. So this one's a little bit smaller and more dense. So you want to be more precise with these darker colors. So now I'm going to mix this color and this color, Rebel and Leader, kind of sideways on my brush again because I don't want to get too high up in my crease. Tap off the excess and really be precise with how I'm placing that. Really deep in the socket. I'm going to keep this color nice and low and mainly focus it on my outer V here to add some depth to the outer corner of my eye. And then when I feel like most of that color has been blended out, then I take it in across the rest of my crease. So if you can see the difference between the eyes, this one just has a little bit more depth on the outer edge than this one. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye. So now I like to go in with an eyeliner. I think it does a good job of defining the eyes and it makes your eyelashes look a little bit thicker. The one that I really love is from MAC and it's in the shade Costa Riche. It's their Eye Kohl. I think it goes on really smoothly without tugging on the skin and it blends out really well too. So I just go in and try to keep this as close to my lash line as possible, and it doesn't really need to be precise because we're going to smoke it out with some eyeshadow. So I do a nice thin line all the way across my lash line. So if you can see the difference between this eye and this eye. So if you can see that line is not super precise and it's kind of jaggedy, well, we're gonna blend it out with some eyeshadow. So then I take a flat definer brush like this one. This is the Morphe M432. And I just go into one of those shadows. I'll probably go into this one, tap off the excess. And then I'm just gonna go back and forth over that line, trying to smoke it out and make it look nice and blended. Because sometimes if you have that, if you just go in with an eyeliner, it can look a little too harsh. So I place it right up against my lash line and I just go back and forth, trying to smoke it out and make it look nice and soft and blended. So there you can see the difference between this eye and this eye. This eye just looks a little bit softer and not as harsh, and this one just kind of looks like I lined my eye with eyeliner. So that adds some nice definition, but it looks really soft. And by the way, if you get eyeshadow that kind of falls down, if you just take a fluffy brush, then you can just use that to just kind of flick it away. I'll also take some setting powder and just kind of pack it underneath my eyes, and that way my eyeshadow will fall down onto that setting powder instead of my makeup. And then when I'm done with my eyeshadow, I'll just flick it away with a brush. And now to add some definition to the lower line, I just take that same definer brush and that same color that we used to smoke out the eyeliner, and then just tightly push it up against my bottom lash line. And I usually only bring it about halfway in. If I wanted something really smoky and dramatic, I would bring it all the way in and just do that on the other eye. And then I like to take a pencil brush and go in with one of those first two colors. I'll tap into this one, tap off the excess, and then just use that to buff out that lower lash line so it doesn't look like a harsh line, it looks nice and faded. Now some people don't like a smoky bottom lash line, but it's something that I really love. So just, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, then don't do it. So as you can see, this eye looks a little bit more blown out, whereas this one still looks a little bit harsh on the bottom lash line for me. And I totally just remembered that I forgot to put a shimmery shadow on my lid, which I really enjoy. So the best way that I find to do that is to use your finger. I find that's the way that you get the most pigment. So I'm gonna go into that Modern Renaissance palette, and I really like this shade here, Vermeer. So I just swirl my finger around there and place it on my lid. I find that you get a better pigment if you do it with your finger as opposed to a brush. If you do use your brush, then I would wet your brush with some setting spray before putting the pigment on your lid. So I just think that adds some nice sheen. Then I would go back in. I would do this before you did your liner, but then I'll just go back in and kind of deepen up that liner. And the higher you bring this shadow, this shimmery shadow up on your lid, the bigger your eyelid's going to look. And after that's all done, I'll just take this brush that we started with no extra product, and then just go back and forth to make sure everything's nice and blended through the crease and blended on the edge. So now on to brows. The brow product that I really like that never fails me is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz in the shade Taupe. Another one that I recently discovered from the drugstore is this Maybelline Brow Define and Fill. The only problem with drugstore brow products is that it's easy for brunettes to find their color, but it's kind of hard for blondes and redheads to find their color because it can look a little too bright. So for blondes, it might look like you have yellow eyebrows, and for redheads, it might look like you have bright red eyebrows. So you want something a little bit more ashy. I find that looks a little bit more natural. The reason I like the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz is that the pencil is so tiny. The pencil is so tiny, so you can really go in and create hair-like strokes, and it looks really natural. So I first start off by taking a spoolie, and you can get one of those at any drugstore. And I just brush my brow hairs up. And I start and fill in the bottom parts of my brows first. So it's just important to remember that brows are sisters, not twins. So if they look kind of alike but aren't perfect mirror images of each other, that's totally fine. And then I just suggest following your natural brow shape. So you might want to just like extend your tail a little bit or create a higher arch, but for the most part, follow the brow that God gave you. I start by going in and just lining up the bottom. So as you can see, that's already given definition to my brow, and I do the same thing on the other eyebrow. And then I just like to take my brow hairs and kind of brush just straight across. And then I fill in the top part of my brow, giving it structure on the top. So right here, I kind of create a little arch that's not necessarily there. So I don't want it to be too dramatic. And then after I do that, after I create the top part, then I just go in and do these small strokes with the direction of my hair to fill in any blank spots. So I feel like I have a good amount of hair right here, so I have to focus a lot of the color right here. And then when I get to the inner corner of my brow, I just flick it upwards because that's the way that my hairs go. And I use light pressure because when creating natural looking brows, you want your inner corner to be more soft and fluffy, and then you want your outer corner to be a little bit more intense. So I just go in very light upward strokes here. Now my hairs start to curve, so I go to the side here. And then I just take my spoolie and I just brush the product through. If I feel like I put too much product here, I'll just go in and kind of just brush the crap out of the front part of my brow to make it look nice and soft. So then I kind of just brush my brow hairs up and sideways and a bunch of different ways just to make sure that I don't have too many bald spots. So you don't want a really super structured filled in brow because this is more of a daytime look, but you just want it to add some definition. And do the same thing to the other brow. So now I set my brows with brow gel. This is Anastasia Beverly Hills in clear. So this is basically just hairspray for your brows to keep them in place, you know, because to keep your brows from like going down like this. Because my brow hairs are crazy sometimes. And you can get tinted brow gel, but I feel like that's not something that I want or need. So now we'll go in with lips. I like to align my lips with MAC lip pencil in the shade Hover. A drugstore option that I just purchased that I've really been enjoying is the NYX Suede Matte Lip Liner. This is in the shade Whipped Caviar. So the reason I like that MAC lip pencil is because I feel like it goes on so smoothly and it blends out really well and it keeps my lip color from bleeding. The same goes for the NYX lip pencil as well. So I like to line my lips just to give some definition. And I just follow my natural lip line. I don't try to overdraw them or anything. And when I line my lips, I even fill them in too with the lip pencil. And then I go in with a lip gloss. Sometimes I do lipstick, sometimes I don't. I don't really have a lot of recommendations on lipsticks because I just get a lot of free samples, so I use those. But the lip glosses that I really enjoy are the NYX Butter Glosses. I have them in the shade Fortune Cookie, Tiramisu, and Creme Brulee. So I feel like that's a nice pinky nude lip, but it gives a little bit of a pop of color. So as you can see, I've been doing this whole makeup tutorial without mascara on because first I like to spray my face with setting spray so it doesn't mess up my mascara. And if you hear some rattling in the background, that's my wonderful daughter. She woke up from her nap, so she's just playing on her little playpen. So the purpose of setting spray is basically hairspray for your face to set your makeup, but it's also to help all those powders sink into your skin, and it makes it look a little bit It makes it look a little bit more natural and youthful and dewy and glowy. So the two setting sprays that I like are the Max Fix Plus. It looks like this. And then the Morphe Continuous Mist Setting Spray. So this has a pump, and then sometimes it can come out like a little, like in big droplets. So I really enjoy this continuous setting spray because it's a continuous setting spray and it's a really fine mist. So that way you don't just get a big blob of wetness on your face. This is from MAC, obviously, and this is from Morphe. You can get this at Ulta and it's pretty inexpensive. So then I basically just take a bath in the spray. So at this point, if my hair was done, I would put a headband on my hair because sometimes the moisture can stick to your hair. And then I just look straight forward and fan my face. My daughter's so excited that I'm fanning my face, because I don't want to transfer any of my eye makeup up or down. So I just look straight forward and fan my face until it's dry. And then the last thing I do is go in with mascara. The mascara that I really love and has never failed me is the L'Oreal Voluminous Original. I feel like it's just as good as any high-end. And this is in the shade Blackest Black. So sometimes I curl my lashes, sometimes I don't. It just depends on what I'm feeling. I really like this mascara because it is really black, and if I did want to wear false lashes, that it blends nicely with the false lashes, which are really, really black. I feel like it's very good at volumizing your lashes and lengthening them and separating them. And I think it does a good job of staying put and not transferring. So when I put on mascara, I think just kind of do whatever you're comfortable with, but I do coat the bottom and the top. And then I do make sure to get really close to the base, and I just kind of blink and roll the wand up. Oh, what a difference mascara makes. And then you could use that same mascara for the lower lash line, but one that I really like for the lower lash line is the Rimmel Lash Accelerator, because its wand is so tiny, which is nice to use on your lower lash line. And I'm probably gonna do my lower lash mascara off camera because I have to get really close to my mirror. And the last thing I like to do is highlight my inner corner and my brow bone. So I'll go in with that same pencil brush and just kind of wipe off the excess on my hand and go into any light kind of shimmery shade. So I'm gonna go into that Jaclyn Hill palette and mix these two colors together. Tap off the excess and then put it in my inner corner and that really just makes you look nice and awake, opens the eyes up. Do that same thing, mix those two colors together. And then I just hit it right on the arch of that brow. That gives a nice highlight to the skin and kind of lifts the brow bone. And make sure it's well blended, of course. And here is the final look. So for me, this is daytime wearable. For some of you, this might be the most dramatic look that you've ever done, but I say just give it a go.